Mark here from Talking Bass. Now, Penny Lane by the Beatles is not only one of my favourite ever songs, it's also a masterclass in melodic bassline writing and a great example of Paul McCartney's timeless tone. So, it's the perfect song for a Talking Bass breakdown. As always, if you want to follow along with this lesson, just follow the link in the description below. That takes you to the Talking Bass website where you'll find the whole breakdown, and then be sure to sign up for free to access the members area where you'll find a ton of free content, forums and ebook downloads, including the scale reference manual. So let's start with that tone. Now, Penny Lane is obviously Paul's unmistakable Rickenbacker sound. It's the Rickenbacker 4001S, neck pickup soloed, strung with flat wound strings and played with a pick. It gets that amazing definition with the pick, while that famous neck pickup balances it out with all that ton of bottom end. And unlike some other Rickenbacker users like Chris Squire or Geddy Lee with their grinding round wound strings, we get that cleaner deep tone with Paul's flat wounds. Also, the Rickenbacker had adjustable rubber mutes at the bridge to help give more of that bouncy upright sound. When combined with the flats, the neck pickup and the plectrum, you get that great McCartney tone that has both definition and low end. Now, as you can see, I don't have a Rickenbacker, and I'm guessing a lot of you out there don't either. So I'm gonna do my best impression by using a Fender Jazz with flat wounds, played with a pick and that neck pickup soloed. So it's the same basic tone idea, just using a Jazz rather than a Rick, and it does an okay job too. And you'll notice that I've also got a little bit of foam there under the strings at the bridge, and that gives us that muted tone. Now, the foam that I'm using is quite soft, so I'm not getting too much of the muting in there. So, you know, we're not getting that tiny kind of dum 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 kind of sound. I've actually got a little bit of sustain there, but it does still have that kind of bounce to it. So now let's have a look at some of that glorious bass line. Now remember, you can check out all of the lesson material for this video over at Talking Bass. Just follow that link in the description below. The tune is basically A-B form round and round, so think verse, chorus, over and over until it moves up a key at the end. And in this lesson, we're looking at the first verse and chorus, how the bass line actually works, and then we're going to look at some of the awesome variations that Paul uses in the repeats. So for the first 4 bars, we have this.
In Penny Lane there is a barber showing photographs of every head he's had the pleasure to know.
So away from the tune, we have this. Now, what we have here is basically a jazz bass line. We have a walking bass line in quarter notes working through a very popular chord progression used in a lot of jazz standards. We've got that 1-6-2-5. We even have embellishments to the walking line and a swing feel. So instead of straight 8th notes like this, we've got a triplet feel swing that's more like this. So we open with this beautiful upper register anacrusis. 1, 2, 3. So we come in on the and of 3 and then we play a triplet on beat 4. 1, 2, 3. But obviously don't get a count in on the original, it just comes straight in. So that 3 and 4 and so it's the F sharp there at the 16th fret of the D string and the B up at the 16th fret of the G string. So F sharp B, F sharp, so we finish on that B up on the top. And that high B at the 16th fret of the G string holds over the bar line and then for a quarter note before starting the walk on beat 2. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay? So even that opening anacrusis, that pickup bar, is so wonderfully inspired. If you want to know how cool this is, just put yourself in this position. Just think of someone in a band giving you a chord progression of B, G sharp minor, C sharp minor, and F sharp. You've got to make up a bass line for this sweet but fairly basic tune. Now, a lot of people would think, okay, I'll use root notes. We're going to play the B, the G sharp, the C sharp, and the F. 1, 2, 3, 4. maybe some of you might think, let's try walking through it. But Paul McCartney has other ideas. He's more like, I know, I'll shoot up here to the 16th fret, play a fill before the first beat, and then hold over that beat. Then I'll walk down through the progression step by step until I get down to this low B 4 bars later. So, after that intro lick, we have the walk. So we've anticipated the first note, the B, and then we come down, A sharp, G sharp, F sharp, E. So we're coming down through the B major scale. So if you know the B major scale, you're coming down through that. B, A sharp, G sharp, F sharp, E, then down to the C sharp. So that's at the 16th fret of the A string. And then up to the F sharp at the 16th fret of the D string. Played twice, and then we have this little skip there on the A sharp, the 7th of the scale there, leading back into the B. So we're back on the B at the end of that. So. And then we're going to come down through the A sharp. So we've got B, A sharp, G sharp, F sharp, and then down to B, all on that same string. Now, I have worked through this with the isolated bass just so that I can hear the tone of each note, because I was quite interested to see where he was playing it. Now, you see lots of different transcriptions of this, and they're all pretty much, different. So I've listened out for when you come down here, when you switch down onto that C sharp, you get more of a boom in there, and then the boom's reduced as you move back up onto that D string, and then when we're down here, you get more of that boomy sound. Remember, you'll get more of a boomy sound with the thicker strings down here, and you can hear him using slides to come down that A string, and then finish on the B. So I'm pretty sure that the fingering that I've put here, that I've transcribed, is what he played. So when we play that B, A sharp, and then G sharp and F sharp, you play the B and the A sharp there, but then you slide down to the G sharp, and again you pick it, and then slide down to the F sharp, pick it again, and slide down to the B. So that whole line from the start. So 1, 2, 3. Now, in terms of the fingering, there are many, many different ways to play this. I'm actually starting with the second and third fingers, middle and ring, for the 16th fret there, that opening lick. And then second finger, first finger, third finger, first finger, second finger, third finger. Okay, so. And then I'm just skipping down with the first finger there for the A sharp to the B. So that's first finger to second finger, then first finger, and then you can use that first finger for the slides moving down. Okay? So this is a breakdown. So what is going on in that line? Well, this is the absolutely perfect example of how knowing a bit of music theory will help with creating a bass line. Yes, I know a bunch of you Macca fanatics are going to be telling me that Paul can't read music and music theory is for snobs, but I am telling you, this line is not just some mystical line sent down from the gods or plucked out of the ether. Paul McCartney has a very specific skill that will contribute massively to how he writes these bass lines. He can play piano. Now, why does this matter? Well, when you play piano, you're dealing with notes. So you're not just dealing with fretboard patterns. You deal with chords. You know the notes of the chords. You play inversions. That's where we have a bass note other than the root under a chord. And the Beatles used inversions all the time, and there's a bunch of them in Penny Lane. trust me, bro, Paul McCartney will understand how bass notes change the sound of a chord on a very deep level. Lennon and McCartney are the most celebrated songwriters in pop history. They knew how to write sophisticated pop songs with sophisticated harmony. It's not by chance. They knew what they were doing. So, back to this line. Paul plays a walking line here through the chords B major, G sharp minor, C sharp minor, and F sharp major. So 1, 6, 2, 5 in the key of B major. Look at the bass notes played on each chord. We've got B for the B major, G sharp for the G sharp minor, we've got E for the C sharp minor, so that's the third of the chord there, and then we've got the F sharp for the F sharp major. It's 2 chords per bar, so in true jazz bass style, Paul connects the chords using the B major scale, which is the main scale for the key of B major. And when he gets to the C sharp minor, he plays the third of the chord, that's the E, before dropping to the root note. So he plays E and then C sharp, thus outlining the chord tones. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Paul wrote this bass line on the piano with the left hand while playing those chords. I'm sure some of you Beatles obsessives out there will know. Then we have the chords B major and G sharp minor again. We lead into that B, the root note, with the A sharp. So a nice little embellishment using an approach note. Then he comes down through the B major scale again. B, A sharp, G sharp, F sharp. Finishing on the B for the B minor chord. So we're switching to B minor here, but I'll get to that in a minute. So again, we're just outlining the chords in there. So again, that whole 4 bars together. 1, 2, 3. So now let's move into the next 4 bars, which sound like this.
And all the people that come and go, stop and say hello.
And played away from the recording, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here we have 3 held notes, B, G sharp, and G natural. These are all played on the A string, so we've got 2nd fret, 11th fret, and 10th fret, okay? Now, these are all played under a B minor chord, which I'll come back to in a minute because that is a chromatic chord, that's not in the key of B major. But by playing these 3 different notes under that B minor holds, we actually imply some other chords. Because as we shift that note, that chord on top, it becomes a different chord. So we've got B, which gives us B minor, but when we move to G sharp, the chord then becomes G sharp half diminished, or G sharp minor 7 flat 5, and then it moves to G, which makes it a G major 7. So that means that chord progression there is B minor, then G sharp half diminished, and G major 7. So this just shows the power of the bass in a setting like this. The chord can stay the same, in this case B minor, but by changing the bass note, we, the bass player, we create a sophisticated progression. Another cool thing to note here is the note duration. Paul doesn't hold for a full whole note on the G sharp and the G. He plays for 2 beats and then rests. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the B, he only holds for 3 beats. Oh, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So he chokes on 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So why does he do this? Well, on the B, cutting off on that beat 4, it gives you time to move up. And, playing up here on the A string still gives us a lot of bottom end. So it's good to move up and down on those low strings, playing the G sharp there rather than up here or up here. It's just going to sound too twangy. On that A string, it's a nice beefy sound. So it gives us time to move up here. But then for these 2 notes, when he plays them for 2 beats each, he's creating space and tension by falling out of the mix. So 1, 2. Just have a listen to that original. You'll be able to hear it and how it kind of creates that tension as we're moving through. After those inversions, those held notes, we're into the F sharp chord for 2 bars. It's actually F sharp sus to F sharp major twice, but we only need to think of the F sharp major, and we have. So that's the F sharp at the 9th fret of the A string and the C sharp at the 9th fret of the E string. So it's just both 9th fret. So you can use 2 fingers for that if you want, or use joint barring. Doesn't matter either way. And those 2 notes are a root 5th pattern. This is the most common pattern in bass playing, whether it's pop, rock, Latin, country, or any other style. If you don't know a root 5th pattern yet, you do need to know it. We take the root of the chord and play the 5th of the scale either above or below. So if we take the F sharp there at that 9th fret of the A string, a 5th from there is going to be C sharp, because if we work up through the F sharp major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we get the C sharp, F sharp to C sharp. And that C sharp, we can take it down the octave below that original root note. Okay, so either way you get that. There's that root 5th moving up, or root 5th moving down. The most common pattern in all of bass playing. Now, rhythmically here, we have some important considerations. The first 4 bars are all walking quarter notes with the odd 8th note embellishment. So that walking gives us a lot of drive and propulsion. It's bouncing along with a nice feel. But then we get to the held notes and the feel changes. It's a more suspended sound. We're hovering, waiting to go somewhere. And then for the F sharp chords, the bass line gets a little more active to signal that we're about to take off again. He plays over the middle of the bar to add rhythmic tension, and the chord is sus4 to major. Again, that's tension. Now this might seem like I'm overanalyzing, but it's this use of tension and release, rhythm, walking bass, rests, that make all the difference and make this a classic. So one more time, the lines so far. So 1, 2, 3. Now, in learning this line, it can really help to know the progression. It's a very, very popular 1-6-2-5 progression, and learning a bass line like this with a special focus on the chords will help with your development as a creative bass player. You can see how other great bassists like Paul McCartney create lines that weave through chord progressions. The harmony is everything. The chord progression is key. You need to focus on what those chords are and see how those lines work through them. So next we have almost a repeat of that section. The chords are the same, but the line is down the octave. So again, we're coming down through that B major scale, but just down here, starting at the 9th fret of the D string. It's exactly the same pattern, just down here. Okay, and then we use that A sharp again, just as we did up here, but again, we're down here in this kind of middle area, so we come down, and then when we get down to the F sharp, we jump up to the B at the 9th fret of the D string. So it's all there in the tab. Then from the held notes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, like I said, the B is up the octave, so we're on the 9th fret of the D string. Then it's the same for the G sharp and G as we played before, and also the rhythm is the same. So again, it's 1, 2, 3, cut off on the 4, and then 1, 2, cut off, 1, 2, cut off. And that means those chokes are purposeful. He's not just, having a bit of a moment. And then once we get to the F sharp, we play a more driving rhythm of... Okay, so instead of playing across the middle of the bar, which he did on the first time, which is a bit more relaxed, we've got this driving... Again with the root fifth, F sharp and the C sharp. And then we drop down to the E, B, open E as we move on to the E major chord. So 7th fret A string and 7th fret E string and then open E, okay? And why is he using that driving rhythm? It's because we're building up to the chorus. So I won't linger on that low repeat of the walking line, but it is worth looking at the fact that Paul plays the first 2 bars with staccato notes. So each of those notes is played short. So you just have to, hold down and then release. As opposed to the first time where they're all played legato. Okay, so full held duration. Down here. And then when we have the repeat, he plays them full duration again. So again, very purposeful. Why does he do this? Well, it's a bit of variation, it's not just the same old line, and it also adds a little more bounce to the notes. They're a little more robotic, not so, smooth, which again adds some tension in there. Why does he want the tension? Well, like I said, as we're, moving on to there, we're getting a more driving feel as we approach the chorus. So all of this is about tension and release. And again, these are not the kind of obvious things most basic bass players would do. There's a lot of thought going into every section of the song. So we hit that E major, which signals a key change to A major for the chorus.
Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. Where beneath the blue suburban skies I sit and meanwhile back.
And away from that recording, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this chorus is in the key of A major. We've modulated from B major down a whole step to A major, and that E chord that we played is chord 4 of B major and chord 5 of A major. So it's what we call a pivot chord. It's common to both keys, and it helps give a smooth transition, as you can hear. Just moves into it nicely. So before we look at the notes, let's look at the chords, because that again will make things a lot easier for learning and understanding the line. Like I said, we're in A major and the chords are A major and then A over C sharp, which is A major with the 3rd in the bass, also called first inversion. Then we have D major. So the C sharp under that A major makes for a nice voice leading into the D. Okay, so for the first bar of A major, we have... So again, he's playing over the middle of the bar, so it's got a nice relaxed feel. So... And he's using the low E there, so we've got that root 5th. Then for the A over C sharp, obviously we're playing the C sharp. That's whenever you see one of those slash chords like that, A/C sharp, we play the C sharp. We play the lower note. So we've got the C sharp there. Again, we've got that dotted quarter note, 8th note tied across. And then we've got this nice little scalar work up to the D, okay? So we're in A major, we're using the A major scale. So we've got A, B, C sharp. So think of the A major scale. I'm sure you all know a major scale. That's what we're using for the melodic bass line here. So we're on the C sharp. That rise up through the scale leads us lovely into the D. And then we've got the D that's going to be leading up to the A again. So this time we've got... Okay, so D, D, then E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So again, working up through that A major scale. Okay, so a nice scalar movement. Again, kind of using that jazz inflection there. This is where knowing your scales and having, worked on walking bass can really help with creating this kind of line. Then we're on the A. And then we drop down to the C sharp at the 4th fret of the A string. And remember that A there is the 5th of the D major chord. We've got that D major. So the A there adds a little bit of tension and kind of variation. We're not just sticking with the D. Okay. Then we've got the same kind of bass line. A. We've got the B, C sharp, A. Again, using that A major scale. Leading us into the C sharp again. So. And then when we're on that C sharp, we've got the D, E, C sharp. Lovely little melodic move there. Kind of an enclosure for the D that we're leading into. So. Okay. And then for the D, just root 5th, again with that same rhythm. And then we just come down through. So we've got C sharp, and then the A sharp, down to the F sharp. We're on the F sharp major chord, which you could also see as F sharp 7, leading back into the verse. But hold it right there, there is something actually quite interesting here. He's playing down through the major arpeggio on the F sharp. So he's not just playing roots and fifths, he's playing the arpeggio, he's playing the chord tones. Again, Paul McCartney knows his chords, he knows his arpeggios. So that F sharp major chord, or F sharp 7 there, is actually out of the key. It's a chromatic chord. We're in the key of A major, remember? F sharp would normally be F sharp minor there, but the F sharp major is used as chord 5 of B major, so it's leading back into B major, taking us back for the verse. So that's the first verse and chorus, and like I said earlier, the song repeats those sections round and round with variations in the bass line. So let's just look at 2 of the variations. So one of the cool variations is on the verse E major chord leading into the chorus. On that first time that we just played, we had E, B, E. Okay, and we've got that pause. But as a variation, we have this pentatonic run of... Okay, so E, C sharp, B, then G sharp, and then the open E. So 7th and 4th frets on both the A and E string. And it's got that lovely bounce to it as he's playing the 8th note swing feel. So, okay. Then, as another variation on the chorus, Paul plays this cool set of arpeggios through the progression. So here Paul's playing through that A major to A over C sharp to D major, really outlining the progression with arpeggios. So he's playing all of the chord tones in there. And he's got this lovely little kind of melodic phrase with the 8th notes. So he's coming up through the A major arpeggio there. So here I'm playing 5th fret on the E string, then 4th and 7th frets on the A string, and then the 7th fret on the D string. You could also play that as open A, then 4th fret on the A string, and then E and A there on the D and G string 2nd fret. Maybe he plays it like that, but most of you will know a major arpeggio as that kind of pattern, okay? So it just helps with memorizing it. Then for the second line on the A over C sharp, he starts on the C sharp and comes up through, again, that A major arpeggio. So he knows what he's doing here. So, okay, so C sharp, E, and then the A. 4th and 7th frets on the A string, and then the 7th fret on the D string. And then for the D major, what's he going to play? He plays the D major arpeggio. Okay, so D, F sharp, A, 5th fret, A string, 4th and 7th frets on the D string. And they're all played in one position. You see how it's all played around each other, so there's nice voice leading. It's got a lovely kind of thematic feel with that same rhythm. Again, just great bass playing there. And remember what I said about Paul knowing his chords. These are not random notes that he just heard in his head. These arpeggios are very purposeful. He's outlining the chords and he knows those arpeggios. This is the perfect example of how understanding the arpeggios for the chords in a progression will allow you to outline the chords and weave an interesting melodic line through them. The same principle also applies to playing fills, basic riffs and solos. So now let's just look at the final chorus. Here the chorus moves up a whole step to B major, which is the same key as the verse. So the F sharp major pivot chord that we used to get back into the verse works perfectly here for the modulation. So let's listen to that section.
Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There beneath the blue suburban skies. Penny Lane.
And away from the recording. So obviously we've moved up into B major, so we've got the B major chord, then we've got B over D sharp to E major, okay? So for the first bar, root 5th, and we're on that B there, 9th fret of the D string, so we've gone high. So then we drop down to, so this time we've got the D sharp here at the 6th fret of the A string, and then we've got this quite interesting little move using the B major scale. B, D sharp, and then that C sharp there leading up to the E. So we've got this quite interesting note there on the C sharp, and it's very easy to hear it there, and it's got a lot of character. So then on the E bar, so we've got more of a driving rhythm here. We're not moving over the middle of the bar. So instead of, we've actually got, as he leads into this next fill. So then we have this cool little fill on the E major. So he leads into it with the C sharp at the 9th fret of the E string, and then we have, so we're working up through E, F sharp, G sharp, A natural, B. So just think of the E major scale. And then down to the F sharp and E, 9th fret and 7th fret there on the A string. So what a cool little line. So all of that so far. Then for the repeat of that chord progression, we're dropping low. So last time we were playing up here at the 9th fret of the D string. This time we're at the 2nd fret of the A string. Again, we're playing over the middle of the bar. We've got that low F sharp, so it's root 5th again. Then we move up to that D sharp for the B over D sharp. So again, we've got that cool little move with the C sharp in there. And then we finish with, so we've got 3 hits on the E, so, and then we come up through the E major scale again, so, and then when we reach the B there at the 9th fret of the D string, so all that root 5th pretty much on the B, so a bit more of a driving rhythm, and then down to the B, 2nd fret of the A string. So the whole of that final chorus. Okay, so that's Penny Lane, and that was a pretty long breakdown. And, you know, it's great because we're getting to look at the amazing melodic playing of Paul McCartney. Now, if you're interested in learning some more Beatles tunes on bass, check out this video where I work through 5 of the most popular McCartney riffs. And you can check out the breakdown and lesson material for this lesson over at Talking Bass by clicking the link in the info below. Okay, enjoy, and I'll see you next week.